Ever wonder why your plants look tired or exhibit explosive growth? What exactly is controlling the growth? Plants have an off and on switch. You can stop your garden from switching off. How does this switching mechanism work? It is incredibly easy to understand. How do I use it to my advantage? Plants want to control the intensity of their growth. Consider this behavior a safeguard. Above ground activities and below ground activities are controlled by plants. Plant diversity switches everything on, having everything in your garden growing in harmony. Diverse plants create diverse soils.
Yeah, I want to talk about this ability of plants to turn off the production of sugars and proteins. So they have basically an off and on switch where they can actually not feed the soil the bacteria and fungi. They will not feed them when they turn this mechanism of producing sugar and proteins in the rhizosphere on the tips of their roots. So by stopping the production of sugars and proteins, the bacteria and fungi have nothing to eat. So the nematodes and protozoa that eat the bacteria and fungi are not producing large amounts or any amount of food for the roots to uptake, which in return slows down the plants. This circle of producing sugars and proteins that get eaten by bacteria and fungi, they in return get eaten by nematodes and protozoa, produces this double consumption, produces in return plant food for the roots to uptake. Now in my example, you can control this off and on switching of this plant by simply having other plants in close proximity. So this plant diversity in this area here. So they will send new sugars and new proteins to feed the bacteria and fungi, which in return feeds the nematodes and protozoa. So in this area, if you have other plants, plant diversity in this area, this mechanism doesn't shut off. This plant has a very hard time of controlling its growth because the other plants that are here are contributing to feeding the bacteria, fungi, and this circle starts because there's enough diversity and enough plant life feeding this root system. And that's how you control the switching off and on, by having your gardens completely filled with diverse plants. Yeah. Okay, so this tree is maybe 8 meters and it's less than, it's around 2.5 years old. And I want to explain the switching mechanism. This is the best plant I have in the garden to explain it. And the switching mechanism is a scenario of the plant not providing sugars and proteins to the microorganisms that live in the soil. So this tree has the option of switching off the supply or cutting off the supply of sugars and proteins to the micronutrients and the fungi in the soil directly below it. But the reason this tree has grown so incredibly fast is because it's been bypassed. This sugar and protein that this tree turns off is being provided by all the other plants that are in close proximity. So this guy shuts off, but these guys are still running full scale, providing sugar and protein to this area of soil. So what happens is it's really hard for this tree to shut off completely or to some extent because the plants that are in the surrounding area are still providing sugars and proteins into the ground. So what happens is, if you want to keep your plants growing abnormally, this is a little bit abnormal because this tree has very delicate branches that break off with the wind. We've had massive windstorms. So the reason the tree is controlling the sugars and protein so that this tree slows down. It has been growing way too fast. So by having plant diversity surrounding a tree, for example, this tree will benefit from all the plants that are in close proximity. There's an endless supply of nutrients and plant food for this tree to grow to any scale it wants, because the tree doesn't have the ability to control what is available in the root system for this plant to consume, because all these other plants are contributing to the soil when this guy shut off. So this idea of plant diversity and biodiversity makes it really hard for the plants to shut off when they want to shut off to control, let's say, the strength of the tree. It's growing too fast. So what happens is this shut-off mechanism can be controlled by the gardener by having immense plant diversity surrounding all specimen plants, individual plants. So this biodiversity is a source of endless energy because the sugars and protein are continuously being supplied by diverse plants, and this tree will have energy to grow as tall as it wants and as quickly as it wants. That is the issue with this tree, is that it had no limitations because everything else is supplying the food to the root system. Now this being 2 years or 2.5 years of growth is absolutely insane, but it makes sense when you understand that everything is contributing to the energy needed by this tree to grow really well. In return, this tree is supposed to create a canopy now and protect shade for everything that is underneath it. So that circular motion or the circular life happens with plant diversity better than with monoculture or just having, individual plants in individual areas. So this effect of ground cover and working together gives this tree endless potential to grow as fast as it wants.